You found your way to Whispers of Crimes, a quiet corner where the shadows of the past are gently told. Here, we speak of real crimes and mysteries, not to shock or scare, but to wonder, to reflect, and maybe to help you fall asleep. So close your eyes, let your thoughts slow down, and come with me into tonight's case. On a warm Memorial Day weekend in 1996, a promising college student vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions, broken hearts, and a mystery that would haunt a community for decades. Her name was Kristin Smart, a young woman full of life, ambition, and dreams for the future. For over 25 years, her family and the world asked the same question: what happened that night? Today we walk through the story, the night she disappeared, the investigation that stumbled, the family that refused to give up, and the shocking twist that would finally bring answers to a case that lost to time. This is the story of the disappearance of Kristin Smart and the search for justice that never gave up. Chapter 1. A Bright Future Ahead. Kristin Denise Smart was born on February 20th, 1977. In Augsburg, Germany. Her father, Sam Smart, was in the military, so the family moved around often. They eventually settled in Stockton, California, where Kristin spent most of her childhood. Growing up, Kristin was known for her warmth and intelligence. She had a genuine ability to make those around her feel like they mattered. After graduating from high school in 1995, Kristin set her sights on a new adventure: college. She enrolled at California Polytechnic State University, better known as Cal Poly, in San Luis Obispo, California. There, she pursued a degree in communications, a field that reflected her outgoing personality and love for connecting with people. College life was everything Kristin had hoped for. She had big dreams of becoming a journalist, traveling the world, and making an impact. Friends described her as full of life, someone who always had a positive outlook. Little did anyone know, her future would be tragically cut short during the very time she was supposed to be carving her path to greatness. Chapter 2. The night of May 24th, 1996. The night Kristin disappeared started like any other Memorial Day weekend, a time for students to let loose and enjoy themselves before the end of the school year. On May 24th, 1996, Kristin went to an off-campus party in the late hours of the evening. She wasn't alone, but the party was filled with familiar faces from the Cal Poly campus. There she mingled, had fun, and as the night wore on, became visibly intoxicated. By around 2 a.m., the party was winding down. Kristin, who had come on her own, needed to get back to her dorm. 3 students offered to help her. Among them was Paul Flores, a fellow student who, according to reports, had known Kristin for some time, but was by no means one of her closest friends. What happened next would forever change the course of their lives. Paul and Kristin started walking back to her dorm, but they were not alone for long. One by one, the group of students peeled away, leaving just Kristin and Paul walking together. Paul later told investigators that he had seen Kristin safely to her dorm, then left, but Kristin never made it back to her room. Witnesses later recalled seeing Kristin stumbling along the sidewalk. She seemed to be in a dazed state, a young woman who had lost her way after a night of partying. No one could have known then that this would be the last time anyone would see her alive. Chapter 3. The search begins when Kristin didn't show up for work the next morning. Her friends grew concerned. But it wasn't until several hours later that anyone thought to report her missing. At first, the campus police assumed Kristin might have just been out partying for the weekend. But her family, especially her mother Denise, didn't buy that explanation. Kristin had never gone more than a few days without keeping in touch. and she would never just leave without telling anyone. As soon as her family was alerted, they began to make the drive from Stockton to San Luis Obispo. By then, valuable time had already passed, and the search for Kristin had only just begun. Law enforcement's early response to the case was woefully inadequate. In the first few days, police didn't immediately treat Kristin's disappearance as a potential crime scene. They assumed she had left voluntarily, but her parents pushed for a more thorough investigation, and within a few days, the case was escalated. The search efforts involved volunteers, local law enforcement, and even cadaver dogs. But no one could find any trace of Kristin. The campus was scoured, but the only clues that emerged were faint traces of Kristin's footsteps, leading to a dead end. It was as if she had simply disappeared into thin air. Chapter 4. Paul Flores under scrutiny from the beginning. All eyes turned to Paul Flores, the last person to see Kristin. Investigators soon became suspicious of his behavior. When questioned about that night, Paul gave inconsistent statements. He claimed he had left Kristin near her dorm, but there were conflicting reports from witnesses about whether he had actually left her there. Some said they saw Paul walking with Kristin. Others claimed he was alone shortly after leaving the party. Moreover, Paul had a black eye shortly after Kristin's disappearance. When asked how he got it, he gave several conflicting explanations. One version was that he got it while playing basketball, while another version involved a fight with another student. These inconsistencies raised alarms, but without hard evidence, the case was still largely circumstantial. Paul also invoked his Fifth Amendment right when questioned further, refusing to cooperate fully with investigators. This refusal to provide answers only deepened suspicions, but despite all the signs pointing toward him, there was no concrete evidence to charge him. The lack of a body made it incredibly difficult to prove what had happened to Kristin, and the case seemed to stall. Chapter 5. A public outcry and new investigations. Despite the lack of progress from law enforcement, Kristin's family and friends refused to let the case fade into obscurity. Her parents, Stan and Denise Smart, became fierce advocates for their daughter. They launched a public campaign to keep her name in the media, even going so far as to put up billboards around California. They were determined to find answers, no matter how long it took. Around this time, the case gained national attention, and the media began to ask hard questions. The public was increasingly aware of the mysterious circumstances surrounding Kristin's disappearance, and many began to call for more action from the authorities. As the years passed, the case went cold, but the Smart family's efforts were unwavering. They continued to push for new leads and new investigations. Over the years, new forensic techniques, including ground-penetrating radar and the use of cadaver dogs, were applied to areas around the campus and beyond. In 2002, Kristin was officially declared dead in absentia, though her body remained missing. The case would remain a mystery for more than 2 decades, until a podcast brought it back into the public eye. Chapter 6. The Breakthrough. A new investigation in 2019. A podcast called Your Own Backyard started to investigate Kristin's disappearance in great detail. Hosted by journalist Chris Lambert, the podcast uncovered new information and rekindled public interest in the case. The show meticulously pieced together the events of that fateful night and raised questions about Paul Flores' role in Kristin's disappearance. It also shed light on the failure of law enforcement to pursue leads with the urgency they required. The podcast caught the attention of the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Department, which had been working on the case off and on for years. In 2021, after a significant amount of new evidence came to light, investigators arrested Paul Flores on charges of murder. His father, Ruben Flores, was also arrested and charged with accessory after the fact for allegedly helping hide Kristin's body. The arrests shocked many who had followed the case for years. But after more than 2 decades, It finally seemed like justice was within reach. Chapter 7. The Trial and the Verdict. In 2022, the trial of Paul and Ruben Flores began. Prosecutors alleged that Paul Flores had sexually assaulted Kristin in his dorm room, leading to her death. They also argued that his father, Ruben, had helped him hide her body. The prosecution presented evidence that pointed to a possible burial site near Ruben's home, but without Kristin's remains, the case was still difficult to prove. During the trial, the defense argued that there was no direct evidence to convict Paul. They claimed that the case against him was based on circumstantial evidence and unreliable testimony. But as the trial progressed, it became clear that the case against Paul was stronger than anyone had initially believed. In October 2022, after months of testimony, Paul Flores was found guilty of second-degree murder in the death of Kristin Smart. His father, Ruben, was acquitted of charges related to hiding her body. The verdict brought some closure to Kristin's family, but their grief over her loss remained. Chapter 8. The legacy of Kristin Smart. Kristin's death, though tragic, sparked change. It highlighted the need for better investigations into missing persons, especially when foul play is suspected. It also exposed gaps in law enforcement protocols and the importance of persistence when seeking justice. Though Kristin Smart is gone, her legacy lives on. Her family established the Kristin Smart Scholarship Fund, supporting young women with ambitions like Kristin's, and her story continues to inspire those who fight for justice, even when the odds are stacked against them. Kristin Smart's name will not be forgotten. Her light continues to shine through the efforts of those who loved her and the many people whose lives she touched. That's all for tonight's story. Another thread in the web of true crime, quietly unraveling as the night goes on. If you're still with me, thanks for listening. And if sleep has already taken you, may your dreams be peaceful and your mind at ease. I'll be here next time by the fire with another story waiting to be told. Good night, and don't forget to lock your doors.